The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Great. Okay, got our imaginary levels back.
Magic levels. Imaginary magic levels.
There we go. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dane and Derek Show. My name is Derek, and I'm one of your two co-hosts. I make a lot of movies and play a lot of tabletop games, and joining me today is my good friend, Dane, as always.
Hi, I'm Dane. I am I'm not an Elden Ring maniac. I'm just not going to be a maniac about Elden Ring on this show this week. I write. I've made podcasts and music in the past. Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, and I'm doing good. You know, it's been a pretty busy April. I started the month off going to a film festival.
Yeah, you mentioned.
Yeah, which is our topic for the day, film festivals. Because we've had a lot of experience in that world going to and being a part of. And this first weekend in April, I went up to Eugene, Oregon for Disorient, Asian American Film Festival of Oregon. And that was the first film festival I've had a film programmed at since I was a student. And really since high school. So it was kind of a big deal. And it was a lot of fun. And I think because of the film festival circuits and my films in the film festival circuits, which, as I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, my new film Sinigang will be playing in LA on May 10th, and
Nice.
it'll be playing in Sacramento now as well, sometime in May as well, and it'll be playing in Houston in June. So yeah, and then also Heroes Pizza, the pizza movie. After not being programmed at one festival twice, it finally got programmed at that festival, and it's also playing in May 14th.
That's awesome.
Which,
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's
kind of a floodgate.
I know. That's what I think is.
When you mentioned to me, I think I mentioned that. Like, I was like, "Is this gonna make it? Like, do you think this is like going to lead to more?" And you didn't know at the time.
Yeah, and it has. It's led to more. Which is pretty wild. Like it's a little bit overwhelming. Like being on the end of being like a filmmaker now and having to submit all the materials that they need to program the film, market the film, screen the film is pretty surreal. Because when we were in high school, we would, collect all that stuff from filmmakers to do said films. Like, I don't know if we made DCPs at BIFF, which BIFF, for those who don't know, is the Boulder International Film Festival. You can go to their website, biff1.com, because there's already another BIFF Boston Independent Film Festival. Or is that, no, it's...
Oh, I can't remember.
No, it's Boston International Film Festival. IFFB, Boston Independent Film Festival of Boston is what I'm thinking of. IFFB is really cool. I've never been to BIFF in Boston, but BIFF in Boulder International Film Festival, is where we spent a lot of time in high school programming for the youth, like the youth portion of the festival, right? That's basically what we programmed for.
So I'll just go over my experience with film festivals. Just big 100-yard look at it. So early high school, I attended the Boulder International Film Festival for the first time. Was kind of like in a little bit of awe at it. I was like, this is fucking amazing. Next year I joined the youth section of the festival, which was very much about putting on films for students, and over time it grew into like workshops and hosting a portion of the festival with student made short films. By the end of our time there, with each successive year, I started bringing more of my film friends like Derek in along the way. Later in high school, I started attending the Sundance International Film Festival. And then I kind of fell off with it in college because I didn't have the money or time for it. I think I submitted one film one year to um the student film festival that got in, I believe.
Yes,
Uh
yeah. They
yeah,
did
it was
play.
the yes, it was a
Your
documentary.
doc. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you were the doc guy back in the day.
Yep. I the most of the films I made were documentaries. I don't know why. They were really fun to make. I think I partially just wanted to be outside making a thing. Was definitely part of
Yeah.
it. But what about
A
you?
doc is
What's
a very
your
accessible way to do it. What was that?
totally? What's your experience with film festivals? Because
Pretty
it's at this point it's longer and more varied than mine by a
Yeah, I
long
mean, it
shot.
starts pretty much the same way, right?
Mm.
You pitched me on joining Biff. I didn't join Biff, and then the next year I did. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I forgot that the first year
yeah,
you
you
didn't take
talked a
me up
lot
on
about it. You talked a lot about it, and then I was like, you know what? I can do it, and Dane can drive, so
it.
this works out.
Yep.
So we did that. I mean, we spent a lot of time with Will and Clara.
And then
Like
Sam
and
by
then
the end.
Sam eventually, which was fantastic. Met a lot of cool people uh Hunter,
Interestingly, though, I didn't
Tristan.
bring Sam into it.
Oh,
Um,
really?
no, the reason I had already known Sam is because Sam was on my ultimate frisbee team the prior
Right,
year.
right.
Um,
Sports. We gotta do the
sports,
sports.
got to do a sports
Um,
thing. And so
yeah,
he showed up to the interview process, and I was like, "Hey, Sam, good to see you. I didn't know you were interested in film. I would have recommended it." And then I was like, "I already know Sam, so I'm going to sit out of this interview." Like,
yeah. Gonna
um,
vouch for him.
yeah,
Uh,
I want to point out I was not a part of the interviewing process for
mhm.
Derek, Will, or Clara or Sam. Um,
Yeah.
so they all
Trying
got in on their own.
trying to think of who else. Danny, Julia, Malia,
Hmm.
uh,
Hunter.
what was his name? Hunter. Yeah, there was that guy that who I know his last name. It's Velasquez.
Oh damn.
Is it Ethan?
No. Oh, he was awesome though.
He was awesome, and I
Um,
remember when he met me, he was like, "Oh, you're a lot shorter than I thought you'd be once you stood up." That was the first thing he said to me, and I was like, "Haha,
that is
yeah."
not a great first impression.
It's because I have a
Anson
long torso. What was that?
Anson was an amazing
Anson.
editor.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And yeah, Ruth, Patty. Shout out to Ruth and Patty.
love him.
Um, like they were our, I guess, like facilitators, like the
Yeah.
adults in the room.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, we would do that basically every Tuesday, and then did that for 2 years. You offered me a ticket to go with you to Sundance, but I couldn't go for one reason or
Yeah.
another, and that
Yep.
was. I still think about that. I still wish I was able to go. And then in college, I went to a handful of independent film festivals in Boston just to view. I took a film festival class, like a programming class.
Oh, cool.
Um, and then most of my festival experience up until I moved to LA was pretty much just getting rejection letters, you know,
Yeah.
um, sending
Yeah.
films out and getting rejected constantly. And then when I moved to LA, my roommate, Katie, who's edited a lot of my films, she had a
Hmm.
job at an editing studio, and her boss's boss um, is one of the board members at Visual Communications, which does the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival.
Hmm.
And she got me in touch with him, and he got me in touch with the executive director there.
Wow.
And from there, I started going to various events and was like trying to help out where I can. I volunteered for various fundraisers, and through that, I met a bunch of people at Tuesday Night Project who also worked at the festival, who I now make
Hmm.
movies with, and now we're all going back this year to LA PFF with a film, which is pretty wild. So yeah, and I guess because I've been doing film festivals have been a part of that journey and that process.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say those 2 years I was on staff at Biff were invaluable to you know going into film school with that knowledge and going into LA with still that knowledge from high school. Like a lot of those things that we learned about programming shorts and like, oh,
Hmm.
we should be looking at 10-minute shorts or less because then we can program more shorts, or oh, we
Right.
should
And
be coming up with really good questions for filmmakers, or we should avoid
it,
filmmakers that don't want to answer questions or that seem really calloused or something because they're not nice people to interview in front of people. Like those are
yeah.
things that really impacted me and that I think about a lot still. Like I think a lot about how to conduct myself around people at festivals because yeah, programmers do not want to program someone who is a jerk or who doesn't want to answer
Mm-mm.
questions or who doesn't want to say like I don't remember how I did that, or like to say things like, oh, I don't really care about this movie, like I don't know.
Yeah.
Among all the good things we did at Biff, we did meet some jerks who were filmmakers, which I think like
Totally. Oh, we
kind of
totally
opened up
did.
my like the viewpoint of like, oh yeah, like the industry isn't so glamorous or so like not everyone's like doing it with the best intentions.
Right, it's not
Um,
all rosy, Like we
yeah.
we we met jerks. It was, our side of it. We were doing a very small part of the whole festival, but we
Hmm.
saw things from other people's perspective. And the truth is, a lot of them, like it's always also very very valuable, I think, to see that the festival is not this monolith. That it, it was a bunch of people doing their best and a ton of volunteers in a
Yeah.
really tiny office in Boulder. That, like, the gatekeepers are not what they seem.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
these films are going in front of real people. You know, um, and that this, because for people who aren't super aware of how, like, film stuff works, like there's there's the indie scene, there's like, which is kind of in the basically the festival scene, and then there's, your Hollywood, your Bollywood, your Chinese, and European, like, um this is a video game term, but your
Arenas.
your AAA studios, um
Yeah.
and then of course there's been some sort of like some disruptors, right? Like there's been, like, YouTube for a while was kind of a disruptor in that space,
Yeah.
and the like, though YouTube didn't kind of really stick around in, like, the narrative filmmaking format very
Hmm.
long. It kind of peaked with, like, Video Game High School, I think.
Pretty
Um,
much. Yeah.
yeah, and then, all that kind of to the side. Uh, the festival scene is kind of where smaller filmmakers who don't want to go, like, you could go be, an assistant producer. Like, it's really, relatively speaking, of course, it is not that hard to get yourself working in professional films in Los Angeles. Um, like, as long as you're willing to be some garbage gaffer at first, or like really work yourself up the
Right.
the pole. And the truth be told, you're probably never going to be Scorsese, right? Like,
Hmm.
you need to be making your own films to become those people, in a sense,
Right.
right? And the
Yeah.
way you do that is you make independent films through the festival circuit.
Yes.
That's where people like, um
Robert
uh
Rodriguez,
yes.
uh, Vin
Didn't
Diesel.
didn't Taika
Um,
Waititi start in
yep, Taika
festival?
Waititi did the did the Sundance circuit. Jermaine
Yes.
Clement, Sterling Harjo,
Wes Anderson,
um,
probably.
Wes
He
Anderson.
Can was his big break, I believe.
Yes,
And so
can
there are
yeah,
tiers to the festival circuit, of course. Like,
yes.
like,
You have your
I would
big
say,
S's.
yes, you have your Sundance, you
Sundance, your
have,
Slam Dance, your South by.
mhm, the LA International, the New York International, like the
Yeah,
London International,
the
the Cannes.
regionals.
I think the Cannes Film Festival might be like the utter top of the film festival
Yeah,
world.
Cannes, Berlinale, or
Mm,
Berlin. Um, those are
yeah.
really big. Then you have your Tribecas, your Tellurides, your
Yep.
Torontos.
Yep.
Um,
So these top
yeah,
tier film festivals tend to, a lot of the really good films from there will go into, like, general audience, filming, film
yeah,
screenings. They'll be, and that's where, like, your kind of weird indie films come from at your normal movie theater.
yep.
Um But there are other sides to all of these festivals. Like that's where short films live now.
Yeah.
It's the only place they basically like live and get seen, and so there's these tiers for younger filmmakers to start working up the ladder of like, and some people never really leave the festival circuit either. Um,
Right.
and some people don't really want to, and I can't really blame them, right? Because when you start
Yeah.
getting into the film festivals are kind of like the last place you can go as a filmmaker before you have to start handing over a certain amount of control to
Hmm.
the studios, right?
Yeah.
Like
It's a
Taika
nice middle in
Waititi,
between. Yeah.
yes, yeah, like Taika Waititi and Wes Anderson can basically make whatever film they want to a point. If Taika Waititi wants to go make a Thor movie, then he gives up some creative control to do that, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so like that's kind of what these are. Um, and it's got some they are kind of magical because the way they work is like for a week or a weekend, just hundreds of movies get screened, and
Yeah.
it's a it's a festival. People come in and they visit for it, and the
Hmm.
filmmakers come and get interviewed, and there are like workshops and like tents and events. It's like a music
There's
festival.
food.
Yeah, there's food and parties. Oh, the opening gala for the Boulder International Film. Like
Oh
I
my
didn't like
goodness.
prom. Like
Yeah.
I fucking hated prom, but like every
The opening
year
gala was
the
great.
opening gala for the film festival was like my prom.
Yeah.
You'd dress nice. I'd bring a date. Like it was awesome. Fucking
Hmm.
loved that. Um,
Yeah.
so that stuff was awesome. Like it's a very fun event, and it's a celebration of the art of filmmaking that is somewhat different than the than going to the movie theater is.
Yeah. It's very raw. It's one step up above what you can do on your own, and it's one step below what you can do with a studio. And so it is
Yes.
truly in this weird boat of like there's not a lot of money behind it, but there's an incredible
Right.
amount of passion behind it. And they kind of
Yeah.
balance each other out in a way that you really can't find elsewhere. It's really difficult to find.
Right.
Um,
But to be truth be told, there is money behind it. It's just a different sort of money.
right.
It's not corporate money.
Hmm.
It's the same sort of money that's behind like big art galleries in New York City.
Yes.
It's a lot of like really rich individuals or smaller organizations. It's not the Disney Marvel machine. Um
Right.
and
It's like your
so
sub $10 million movies, basically.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and
Like
mhm.
like you know there are like $100,000 movies that win at Cannes. Not often
Right.
these days, but frequently.
Yeah. It happens. It's one of those things where like when it does happen, it's a big deal.
Hmm.
And
Though to be
it's
fair,
always interesting.
a ton of movies that were made for way less than $100,000 do get shown at Cannes every year, right? Like
Hmm.
it's about as accessible as this very inaccessible art gets.
Yeah. And it's the thing too is that like something I probably should have mentioned at the top of this episode is that you do have to pay to submit your film to these festivals.
Yes.
And there's no guarantee that you'll get in.
No.
And so in some ways it is the most accessible way to get your film seen in the most traditional sense possible, because like you could
Hmm.
just upload your film to YouTube, but
Yeah.
then it's in the ocean of YouTube and it's not playing in a theater, which I know for a lot of movie people that's a big goal of theirs, is to have it play in a theater. I know that for me that's a goal,
Yep.
and for some people that might not matter, and if it doesn't matter then maybe YouTube or Vimeo is a good spot for it. But I think for me, it's like seeing it in front of a live audience and getting a film in front of the right people. Because I think one of the most influential things that, like, moments that I think I remember from Biff, was remember that short film about the kid that's sent to go break up with that woman, for her
Yes.
boyfriend.
Yep.
Remember after that Q&A, like we found out that some guy in the audience cut that filmmaker a check. he cut her a check for X amount of money she needed to like develop the idea.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that like blew me away that just some random guy in the audience did that. And it's like, that doesn't happen every time, doesn't happen every day, but it does happen, right? You make a
Yeah.
film that resonates with people in a way that, you simply, it's not that you can't find it online with people commenting on it, but it's different when like you have a shared experience with people and they do
Yeah.
something like that, or they tell you something like, or like, I don't know, like there's nothing quite like being in a room full of people laughing or a room full of people crying, especially at a
Yeah.
festival.
And
Um,
yeah, like I always think about the fact that like on the internet, the numbers that you need to reach to feel like you've shown your work to a ton of people are so high,
yeah,
right? Whereas like if you show your film to 200, 300 people at a festival in a theater, that doesn't feel the same as 200, 300 people watching your film on YouTube. It does not
right.
feel the same at all.
Or yeah,
Um, because you see every face reacting, and like you said, part of what a film festival is it's the festival brings the audience. The audience typically when you are in attendance of a festival, like Sundance was my big experience with this, where it's like you have to basically buy your tickets in July and the festival's in like January, and they do not announce what films are going to be there yet. They're like, no, you get to buy some tickets or a pass to the
yeah,
film festival, and then they show you what movies are coming. So the
hmm,
audience just wants to come see cool films. Like
exactly.
that's what the festival does, is it creates an audience and then puts the right movies in front of that audience. Um,
Yeah,
like people like often will bash gatekeepers or curators, but I actually am personally of the mind that so long as they are not doing so toxic in a toxic way, those roles are actually often very, very important for finding new talent and helping people out. Like,
yeah,
and so like part of what you're doing if you get your film into a festival like you have is the festival's being like the deal kind of is the festival saying like we'll find you your audience for you.
yeah,
um if we accept your film into our festival, we think you fit with our work and our ethos, and our audience will like your piece. So we'll find it for you. We
hmm,
bring the audience, you bring the film. Um and there's a lot of benefit to that, right? Because that's where you meet people, and there's a networking aspect, and you get your name out there, right? Like it's
yeah.
yeah.
It's basically like in a very corporate way to look at it, right? Like you make a film, it gets into a film festival, and then that becomes like your calling card, your business
Yep.
card while you're there, and you get to talk to people and get to learn a lot. Like I
Totally.
think that was probably the most valuable experience that we had at Biff, was getting to just hang out with these filmmakers,
Yeah.
for the duration of the weekend,
Hmm.
and getting to just to talk to them about movies or their life or like anything really. I think a lot about the guy that made that climbing documentary.
Yeah.
Um, he was really great. He was a really fun person to chat with. Just
Hmm.
just in general. And I think like when I was at Disorient like 2 weeks ago now, just getting to hang out with other filmmakers and just like hear, not even about their process, just like the little things they do every day, you know, like what foods they
Yeah.
eat, what like how they like their coffee, whether or not they even need coffee. All those little things. It's really interesting. Like, and it's very much like it's very much like a film festival is like lightning in a bottle, you know?
Hmm.
It exists
Yep.
for a very specific period of time and it'll never exist in that specific incarnation ever again.
Nope.
And so to be there for it is like really special. Um
Yeah.
yeah.
It
And yeah.
I will say there is no going to a movie like going to a festival movie. Like every
Yeah.
time I go to the normal theater, like it's a little bit like that. Like that feeling of like maybe a movie you adore, you got to see in the theater, and it's never going to
Mhm.
quite be like that again. Um, the festival is like that times 10. because
Yeah.
the likelihood that you'll ever get okay, let's say like I saw The Force Awakens
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 times in the theater. Um
Damn.
because I really liked The Force Awakens in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um before any of the prequel or sequel trilogy kind of got a little off the rails. Looking at you, episode 9. But I saw that many times. With a film festival, you can't even do that.
Yeah.
Like you can't like maybe a film is being shown at multiple festivals and you could go hunt it down again, but that's a
Right.
pain in the ass, and like that's expensive as hell.
Yeah.
Like that's it. And if and odds on you may never even get a chance to like own that movie on DVD or something, because
Oh
they're
yeah.
never gonna get made that way. Like it's literally like, especially with like the short films, that's gotten a little better because YouTube and Vimeo exist and you can
Mm-hmm.
find some of those again. But like that's it. Like you get your one shot to see these things, and it's amazing and it's so cool.
Yeah.
And usually the theaters are packed, no matter what size the theater itself is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so it's awesome. It's a very cool experience. I'm not trying to like ignore some of like there are downsides, right? They can be
Oh
kind of
yeah.
elitist and etc.
Yeah.
Um,
But it also, to that point though, I think it depends on the festival, right? Like I think there are a fair number of festivals that are out there to take your money and use you, right? But there's
mhm,
also some really great festivals that, like, once you know the humans behind it, you know, you're in it, right? And I think that's also a very intrinsic part of festivals is like, like everyone talks about how like the only way to get into Sundance is to know one of the programmers.
mhm,
And I think that sentiment is very true. Like you have to be friends with like all these festivals because they are a way for you to find an audience, and they're also people. They're not
yeah,
just like they're not computers feeding a corporate
mhm,
machine. And I think
yeah,
like to a certain
and
extent, right? Like yeah, you go.
and the truth is like when you get to the rank of like Sundance, Cannes, all of that, the number of submissions that they get is so high as to uh basically it's impossible for them to
Hmm.
watch them all, even with their resources.
Right.
So at that point, you do start kind of needing recommendations, like literally. I rarely begrudge that on their part.
Yeah.
I wish it was a little more transparent and such, but yeah, and like that's the thing though, is that's why you're not starting trying to get into Sundance and Cannes, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that is definitely something worthwhile talking about. The festival strategy. Da da da. Um like basically you can narrow it down to there's your locals, your regionals, your like specific film festivals, and then like your big ones.
Hmm.
Um
Hmm.
so like BIFF is like a regional festival, right? Um
Yes, yes.
Yeah, BIFF is what I would call a regional festival, and then if like Louisville had a festival, that I would call that a local festival. Um, and then you have like your more specialty film festivals, like food film festivals, or your Fantasia, your fantasy and science fiction film festivals, or in my
Hmm.
case, Asian American festivals, or like
Yeah.
Latinx film festivals, or like those kind of fall into that S tier special. And then you got like your
Hmm.
big industry ones.
Yeah.
Basically, when I made my film, I knew that I wasn't quite ready to start submitting things to the big levels. But I knew that if I could make a film that would get into the special tiers, specifically the Asian American Film Festival circuit, I knew that that would at least give me enough space and time to grow and learn how to be at festivals and how to
Hmm.
navigate that scene, and also give me another like a bit like another I guess like not like a milestone, but it would help me understand what it takes to make a festival film in today's world in a
Hmm.
way that I could then bring to like a big Sundance level, right? So in a way, like I strategized and I was like, okay, let me make a film that I'm not really aiming to put it in Sundance. So
Yeah.
that means that now my deadlines are all changed because all the festivals, like the locals, the regionals, the specials, and the big ones, all happen at different times of the year. Your big ones happen January through March. Your specials happen April through June, July, and then like your regionals happen through like July through like February of the next year.
Yeah, the
It kind of
regional ones
varies.
kind of have the long path.
Yeah,
Because
and
usually,
it's
because that also has to do with sort of like the very top tier
yes, premier
festivals are so,
status.
yeah, the premier ones, they're sort of at the top. They have that time slot of like when their films go, because film studios in like Hollywood will scoop from the top of them basically,
Yes, and then release them
because
later.
yeah, release them throughout the rest of the year, often as sort of Oscar bait.
Yeah,
To be able to do that, they do kind of need to have a timing. There's a timing thing for that. So yeah, the regional
yeah,
ones kind of happen a bit throughout the year. Um,
yes. It kind of varies based on like what's a good season to come visit the state you're in. Um, like February is always like a hit or miss winter in Colorado when BIFF
yeah.
happens. There was one
Yep.
year it happened in March, right? Um,
That was the year after we left. It
okay,
was That
yeah,
was the year it was like Sam and Will on their own.
because that was their like 20th anniversary, right?
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it varies, and I think like basically you want to like it's like such a delicate game because like you have to make a film, finish it, or get it almost finished in time to submit it to festivals.
Hmm.
Finish it if it's not finished before the notification date, so you can resubmit basically. Like write a nice email saying like, "Hey, here's my finished film with its color grade and its final sound pass." So
Hmm.
ignore the ungraded, unsounded footage that I sent over, because you can do that with festivals, but I don't recommend it. I recommend submitting a finished piece because it's really hard to change someone's opinion once they've seen an unfinished piece.
Yep.
Um, but basically, you have to like time it, and like I got very lucky with Sinigang. Like like we started pre-production in like September. I'd locked my lead actor in May. We started pre-production in September. We shot the
Hmm.
film in November, and the
Yeah.
deadline for pretty much all these festivals that I've just gotten into was December 15th, almost a month after we finished principal photography. So
Yeah.
we basically had 1 month to do the edit, the color, and the sound mix, which
Hmm.
was rough. The edit was the
Yeah.
easiest part. The film was basically edited by the time we were done because Katie is a god and was editing on set. It just took like an extra like 2 weeks to kind of get color and sound to kind of like match up and to get some like festival materials ready. Because that's the other thing about film festivals. Festivals love a good film with a good amount of materials like posters, stills, behind the scenes photos,
Hmm.
director bios, director
Hmm.
statements, a full cast and crew list.
The
Festivals
movie needs a
love that.
story. The
Yeah.
movie needs a story. It's why they often will show a lot of documentaries, because documentaries
Yeah.
tend to have a ton of story around them.
Yes. And like intrinsically the filmmaker is a part of that narrative. And I think that's something that like in today's world is maybe a little bit easier to kind of sink into because of like the vlogger culture on YouTube.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
basically, yeah, in a way you do have to picture yourself as a filmmaker. Um like I don't know, like you can go to like my website and see like my bio. That's the bio that I send to pretty much every film festival. Um and it's got a little bit of a narrative in there of like where I'm going, what I want to do, who I am and what my films are about. And
Yeah.
that's like a really great way to kind of get people on board with it. And then also like I have a little like little blurb about like like sinigang is a film about making a dish. It's about making a soup, but like just like but like everyone has a kind of dish like this that connects you with your family and your culture and your life and your hobbies and your passions, and that's what this film is about. Yada yada yada. I don't remember the rest. I spent a lot of time, wordsmithing that, but having those kinds of things plus like a poster and all that stuff, it feels very like that's not my like. It feels very much like that's not my job as a filmmaker, but when you're in the indie scene like this and you're submitting to festivals, it is kind of your job. Like there's so much you have to carry outside of just like writing and directing a movie
Hmm.
that I think is often overlooked when submitting to a festival because they want to see someone that has a narrative, that they could envision working with at the festival for years to come, and that they can
Yeah.
see who would be, an interesting person to talk to and do a Q&A with.
Hmm.
That I think is like the big thing there with that. And um it's it's a very it's like applying to college over and
Yep.
over again,
Yep.
submitting to film festivals, and that's like a really interesting state of being. Uh, when you're
Totally.
constantly submitting your work and you're pouring your soul out there, and for years I got rejections. I don't know, like maybe 100 rejections from festivals. It's quite a bit of money I've poured into this to submit my films to festivals, and it's only now, maybe like close to a decade after, I started, and almost in like 8 years after like my last film was programmed, that I'm finally now getting back into the circuit. And it's
Hmm.
like it's tough. It's a tough world, and to stand out, you really have to know yourself and know your film and know what you want out of a festival, I think is the key, right? Because you can submit your film to tons of festivals, but I found that it's better to submit your film to a handful that are more specific to the film you have than to just everywhere,
Yeah.
because not only is it cheaper, but you're really taking into account the audience that this film will be playing in front of.
Yeah, because by the time you start making films for regional festivals and above, you basically need to be making utterly fully professional films that
Yeah.
are for with the intention of a relatively broad audience, an
Yes.
artistic audience, with an indie eye, definitely.
Hmm.
But you need to be thinking on that scale,
Yeah.
um, which is it's a different level, which is why these things have tiers and why it's like the next film you have that I'm assuming you will do a round of submissions with, I imagine you will likely submit to some of the same festivals you've submitted to once before, and maybe the next tier up, the like the local to like sub-regional festivals, right?
Yep. Yeah. I
um
mean, you are exactly right. That is the idea. It's to make a film that is still specific to my voice, but a little bit more broad in the sense of being able to reach a wider range of people. So,
mhm.
yeah, so I could put it in BIFF. So I could put it in like New York International or Los Angeles International. So I maybe have a slim chance at Sundance, but that's not the big priority. It's getting it to all these other festivals where, all those people go to Sundance, right? And all those programmers from Sundance go to these festivals, right? It's getting it in that lateral pool. It's slowly growing the lake of which I'm living in until it's an ocean.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, yeah, you guessed it exactly right. That is the next hopeful goal, which
Right.
starting that process again is definitely
It takes
we should
energy.
yeah, we should do an episode on starting the process of something new and just
Or
how
just
slow it
submissions in
is.
general.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm in that process right now. As I'm touring this film around, I'm starting
Hmm.
something new, and it's definitely a very weird contrasted energy to be carrying around. But
Totally.
this was really great. We should do a part
Yeah.
two sometime. And also, maybe we should try. This would be wild, but I wonder if it'd be really cool if we did a live episode of Biff. Um,
That
I
would
don't
be
know how
cool.
that'd work,
I don't know how it would work either, but
but
that'd be cool.
Ruth or Patty, if you're listening to our show, uh, uh help us. I don't know. Don't no, ignore me. Uh, but yeah, no, that'd be cool. Man, we should go to Biff sometime.
We should.
I'll
We
try to
should.
come back in February next year, and we can go to Biff. That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be good to see some films there, and go to the Boulderado. Oh,
Mm,
what a beautiful hotel.
yeah.
Um, and the Boulder Theater. What a great theater. Well, we're definitely at time.
Definitely. Definitely.
This will definitely warrant a part two. But thank you all for listening to us just ramble about film festivals and
Hmm.
the process of it and just our feelings on it. This was shall I say, a good ep.
A good app indeed. Um,
Well, with that, everyone, you can follow the show at Dane and Derek everywhere. And you can see the movies I'm making on my website, Benig-Aiello.com, which I'll probably have links to where you can buy tickets to see my movie, because I think some of them will be virtual, so I don't think they'll be region locked. Um, so yeah, Dane, where are you existing on the
you
web
can
these days?
find me. You can find me at danewrites.com. There's links out to my Substack where you can find examples of my writing. Um, Also links to my podcast, music. And yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Good stuff and good apps. Happy filmmaking, everyone. Uh, we
Yeah,
will
we'll
catch you in the next one.
catch you later.